All right, welcome to the Daily Exchange, guys. We're here and we're talking with CZ. See you guys in a sec. I wanted to introduce our guest, the man himself, the CEO of Binance, CZ. Welcome to the Daily Exchange.
Thank you for having me, Fred.
So let's talk about, CZ, let's talk about Binance a bit, because I think just for everyone, if they don't know, I just want to recap. Obviously, Binance is one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges that's out there. I think it's a great benchmark of the industry. I think you've done some great things around safety and some great things around, really keeping that integrity and trust with people. And I just wanted to ask, let's start by talking about Binance. I think what's interesting right now, what's some things that Binance can offer right now that traditional exchanges and banks can't offer?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff we do. For starters, we run 24/7, so which is already pretty different from the traditional financial services. The traditional stock exchange is only open for a couple hours a day. So that's very different. We provide liquidity globally. We service every user, most users around the world. So that's very different. We combine a lot of different services into one platform. So historically, you have the exchange, you have brokers, you have so everything spread out. You have a lot of middlemen in play, but as the technology improves, now we don't need, given the blockchain is the medium for money to flow, we don't need a lot of that intermediary. So now we have retail directly to exchange. And then we have the exchange providing other services like lending, basically financial services, lending, staking, all of these things. And so there's a lot of stuff that we can offer now, which looks very similar to what people offer in traditional financial fields, but the way it's offered is quite different. And I think we offer it in a very low cost way. So that's because this new structure is much more efficient than the historic structures. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, some of the things I can think of on top of my head.
Brilliant. I think you're right. I think the 24/7 is great as well. I love that.
It's really tough on us.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only imagine. It's one of those things. I think when you get into cryptocurrency, you get into that 24-hour mode. You just lose sleep, and it's quite wild. I want to talk about decentralized finance because you mentioned staking, and let's sort of break that down. But when it comes to decentralized finance and this idea of lending and people being able to lend to other people in a decentralized way and not having a middleman in the middle, tell us, what are some of your views around decentralized finance, and what else do we need in the ecosystem to make it really quite prevalent?
Sure. I think DeFi is quite hot, but it's still quite early. So I think there are still inherent risks and also potential failures in that space. Because this is the first time where we rely, the theoretical DeFi should be that we rely on a smart contract. So we give money, put money into a smart contract. The smart contract lends the money out to somebody else to do something. There is inherent risk of that, the borrower paying the interest and returning the principal. So how well that would work, there's a lot of different models that's being tried. I think some of them will fail potentially, and some investors will lose money. So it's a fairly high risk area. And then there's also we kind of in between where we offer a centralized platform. We offer lending and those services on a centralized platform, but using cryptocurrencies as the currency. So we kind of in between that. And for us, the money that people lend to other users stay on the platform. We do risk manager for it, and then users get the interest. So there's different models being tried around. I think some of them will be successful, some of them may or may not be. Mm-hmm. But overall, though, in the long run, I think people will figure out, we're still in very early days. So in the long run, I think people will figure out working models, and those will become big, and the models that doesn't work will become small.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things right now, a lot of central banks have reduced their interest rates again, and so people are trying to find places to park their money. Do you think decentralized finance will give decentralized finance an opportunity to be that place if people park their money?
I definitely think so. I think basically everything that the Fed's trying to do to encourage spending, including zero interest rate, including printing more money, all of those things encourage people to put their money somewhere else, right? Just don't hold it. It's basically telling you not to hold the fiat money. So so then those money will, so for example, on Binance right now, if you hold BUSD, which is a stable coin that's pegged to the US dollar, you get 15% interest. Because that's money that's used to finance margin trading, the margin traders. So again, this is not a bank saving, but this will be a high interest for people who wants to hold fiat. This is a very good option, and at the same time, I think the zero interest rate will encourage people to spend money elsewhere, which I'm sure a portion of that $2 trillion that's just printed in the last 3 days will go into crypto. I don't know how much of it will be, but I think overall that's good for the industry.
So recently, let's talk about that. I guess interest is one way that people can get finance or get involved with decentralized finance. But there's also staking, and recently there's been a bit of a controversy around Justin Sun and his acquisition of Steem, the blockchain, and I think. I just want to discuss this idea. So Binance itself obviously has tokens of Steem that it holds. And, what's your sort of view on exchanges voting for blockchains?
So we have a very clear view. So the Steem thing, we made a mistake we thought it was a regular upgrade. So we sort of supported the regular upgrade. Before we did that action, we didn't know there was like contention in the community. And we do this very, very often in terms of hard fork, soft fork upgrades. But our fundamental view is very simple. We do staking too, so that the users who hold coins on us get the financial benefits of the staking rewards. But we are not going to do any part in voting blockchain governance. We're not going to interfere with other people's governance of their blockchains. And especially, we're not going to use the users' funds to vote for that. If users wants to vote, then we may hold a vote on our platform to let users vote on our platform, and then we relay that vote to the blockchain, because some of the users may want to hold the funds with us just so that they can trade, but they may want to vote as well. So in blockchains where there's a lot of voting going on, then we may do that. But that's just relaying our users' vote onto the blockchain. We are not in a position. We don't want to be in a position to make decisions using our users' funds to make decisions to blockchain governance. That's we don't want to be in that business, and there's no benefit for us to be in that business. We're like, as an exchange, we are a very neutral platform. If a project does well, then a lot of people trade it. If a project doesn't do well, less people trade it. But it's not us managing those projects. So that's very clear. So that philosophy is very, very simple. Unfortunately, we did make a mistake that we didn't recognize what we were doing. It was actually impacting the voting. So we withdrew our vote. They still have contentions between Justin and the Steem community. But that's their problem. We're not involved. Yeah.
I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing that. And it's great that you have those key principles, CZ. It's great for our community. Binance is an international exchange, and there might be some different needs of different users around the world. Can you share some of those differences and ways that different people around the world use Binance?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's many different ways that we didn't even imagine that people will use Binance. There's so many different culture differences, culture norms. So I went to Turkey, right? So people were taking me to walk around the street in a very busy shopping area. And there was like 3 or 4 shops and with selling crypto. They all use Binance. And one shop on the storefront with like a big glass, like 50-inch TV is the Binance trading interface. So like they're basically showing the Binance website right on the shop front. So that's a really interesting thing. And so what turned out to be is that all of those guys are VIP traders because they trade high volumes. But actually, they are the shops that are actually selling Bitcoin or crypto to other retail traders who are just walking on the street. So there's those type of guys in Turkey, for example. I'm sure there's many other countries that works like that. For example, in Russia, people trade with cash, literally bags of cash with bodyguards. So that's something I didn't really know until I visited there. And so there's a lot of different there's a lot of different cultures that uses Binance, and we're still learning a lot of the small differences in different cultures. A lot of places where we see when banks are not very friendly to crypto businesses, people use P2P trading. A lot of the offline trading methods are used. And in other places where the government wants to attract blockchain businesses, the banks wants to work with crypto exchanges, and then everyone uses online for payments. So there's a lot of small differences here and there, and it's actually quite a big challenge for us to sort of service everyone, figure out how do we position the product so that it works for a relatively large number of users.
Makes sense. And I think so. Another thing, that was recent. You guys launched an exchange is separately in the US, and I could imagine that was quite challenging. I don't know if you have any stories to regale about that. I guess I wondered, did you ever consider leaving the US market?
Well, no. So actually, US is a very interesting, very tricky market, actually. I think US is from a startup perspective, for a startup to start a cryptocurrency exchange or anything that deals with money, is very expensive. So you got to get state-by-state licenses. You got to have your lawyers. You got to have everything set up. So when we first started, we just said number one, we don't have the funds, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the energy to do that. So we actually never just sort of explicitly left US alone. So Binance explicitly started outside of US. We're just growing in all the other parts of the world without growing in the US. So we explicitly did not sort of go into the US. So it wasn't so much of us leaving the US. It was like we were never really there. And then, admittedly, some of the US users used various different methods to try to use our platform. We can only prevent it to a certain degree. But once we got big enough, we said, well, now is the time to invest the money, get lawyers, find a partner, find a team with expertise in this area and with local presence, so that they know how to service the US market properly. So it was like we were very cognizant of the fact that we were not equipped with that before. So at a certain point, it made sense for us to spend the money and work with a partner to do that. So now we're kind of doing that. And to be honest, we've only been live for a few months, and the growth is good, but there's still like 13 or 14 states that we can't service. So that we're still missing the licenses. They're still going through the process of applying for licenses. It's a long, expensive process, but they're going through it. So but US, fortunately, it is a big market. So at a certain point, it's worth it to invest heavily, and then hopefully be able to service the larger market. What's interesting is that's also the higher barrier. It works both ways. It's actually really hard for other startups to compete. So I think in the US, there will only be a few large exchanges. Hopefully, Binance US will be one of them. I think our partner, BAM Trading Services, they have a very strong team. I'm pretty confident that Cooley leading that team will be able to execute well. So hopefully that'll be good.
Fantastic. And then with right now, there's obviously a lot of business challenges going on, and we saw, I guess, a real crypto winter, and it kind of weeded out many different projects. And obviously the ones that weren't quite strong enough to survive. Do you think there's going to be some other projects that end from this new economic turmoil?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think basically right now, both the stock market, I think a lot of companies will be really hurt from the stock market crash, but also crypto prices dropping as well. And also just because the stock market crashed, people have less, just spare money to invest in crypto. I think, and then with the Bitcoin price crashing, dropping, there's definitely going to be other companies who are not well financed, who does not have the proper cash reserves, funds reserves to survive. and some of those will probably go bust. I would actually expect a number of crypto businesses to sort of suffer or go bust as well. I do advise all of the viewers or listeners to be very careful in this market because it is just a very highly volatile situation, and some businesses will go bust.
Are there any projects that you find quite interesting right now?
Yes, there are a lot of different projects that I do find very interesting. So there are a number of debit card projects that I think that are interesting. So now people can swipe the same debit card, just like a Visa, to spend their crypto. So this way, I think we haven't really cracked the payments, e-commerce aspect of it, because if you ask a merchant to accept crypto, but then let's say the merchant has to install a specialized machine, install different apps, but then the merchants say, wait, only 1 in 1,000 people are going to use this, right? So why am I bothering to like serve? And everyone, and that 0.1% of the population already have fiat anyway. So why do I bother? So that makes crypto adoption a lot harder for payments. But now if we say, well, to the merchant, they accept fiat, but then the user can pay with crypto. Once we do that bridge, then the crypto adoption will increase. Once the user side increases to a significant point, let's say 50% of people are paying in crypto, and then the shops will all rush to convert their POS to accept pure crypto. So I think there's a lot of things that are really interesting. I think gaming is a really interesting field. Gaming is all like same demographic as crypto holders now, like all young male with discretionary spending power. And also games are international, they're online, they're virtual. Why do you need to integrate like 20 different payment gateways to sell your game around all over the world? Why don't you just take crypto and that integrating crypto to solve that problem once and for all? So I think there's a lot of synergies in that area as well. And also almost all games have in-game tokens, and that can be blockchainized. So there's a lot of synergies there, which I'm surprised that it hasn't really taken off more, but I guess it will just take time. So there's a lot of interesting different dynamics in addition to DeFi, etc. So there's a lot of different things in play, and that I think all of them are very interesting.
Let's talk about some of the services you currently have, and maybe I'm interested in some that you might be pausing or changing. One in particular might be the Launchpad, which funds new projects. Given the current market conditions, will you be continuing the Launchpad?
Yes, I think we are continuing with Launchpad. I think basically, look, the economic environment fluctuates, but fundamentally, I believe that being able to raise money globally is a killer app. So there are many strong projects that don't have the, so in some of the developed countries, this is not so much a problem. There's a lot of VC, like for example, if you look at the US, there's a lot of VCs backing projects, etc. But even there's some key differences. Whereas there's in many other countries, like say for example India, China's a little bit different. China has a very strong VC economy as well. But in a lot of smaller countries, let's say if you're a good developer in Ireland or some part of Europe or some part of Africa, it's very hard for you to raise proper money. And so now I view that as a fundamental killer app for crypto, and so we'll continue to do that. In a down market, the ability to raise large number of funds will be limited. So we should adjust people's expectations that you should just raise a smaller amount for now and build your product. But even in bear markets, there's still strong, actually, especially in bear markets, strong projects will come out, and strong projects will continue to push forward. So that would not stop. Yeah.
Susie, tell me about. I would love to know about. Binance has changed over time, and tell us about what is your vision over the next 5 years for Binance?
Sure. So Binance, our vision mission is basically we want to provide access. Well, we want to increase the freedom of money. So I think today our money is not that free. There's a lot of there's so many different problems with it. I can talk about it for a long time. But number one, even after you pay your tax, if you want to send money across countries, if you want to invest in a project overseas, is not easy to do. Our money doesn't have a lot of freedom, and also you constantly made poorer without choice. With a quantitative easing, you're becoming poorer. You just became 2% poorer probably, or more. There's a lot of those kind of issues with the current money that we want to increase the freedom of money. And there's also a lot of problems with the current system. I alluded to it earlier, but I didn't really finish telling the whole thing. The current system, we can't really blame on the CEOs, right? Because the CEOs took a big bonus and left. But that's how if you look at the airlines are all going bankrupt right now, and they all need bailing out. But they used billions of dollars to do buyouts, to do buybacks of shares. But this is not this may or may not be their own fault, to be honest. We have a system where if you look at the Wall Street analyst calls, all they ask is how much profit did you make this quarter? What's the stock price? Nobody ever asks about, okay, do you have enough cash reserves to survive a 90% downturn in the economy? Nobody ever asks that. If you imagine there's two CEOs in the boardroom, one says, well, I'm going to reserve 90% of the cash for a downturn. The other one says, I'm going to use that cash to do stock buybacks. I'm going to push the stock price up, and all the investors can cash out and be happy. Guess which one's going to get the vote? The guy who's going to reserve the cash for a rainy day will be kicked out so quickly. So it's our system that kind of causes a lot of these problems. So now we're training CEOs to spend all the cash, push the stock price up. Whenever there's a slight sort of a fluctuation in the market, we get the government to print more money to bail us out. So with crypto, then you can't do that. So our mission for Binance is just to increase the access to crypto over the next 5 years. So this is why we have the exchange, which provides liquidity and access to crypto. Traditionally, we were just doing when we first started, we were doing Bitcoin to other cryptocurrencies. But going forward, we're adding more and more fiat direct access in regions where we can do that. So for the next few years, we're just going to be adding more access to so anything that we can do to increase access is good. And that's kind of in our roadmap. So that's really the key for us right now.
What's sort of coming up in the next 12 months? What are you excited about?
Sure. So there's actually a lot of different things. At any time in Binance, there's always a lot of different initiatives. I can't really talk about some of the stuff that's happening right now because we can only announce them when they come live. But the overall general directions, we want to provide more. We want to provide more access for people to access crypto. So more fiat on-ramps, more fiat gateways, more bank channels, more credit card channels, more just partners, more P2P channels. So we're pushing really, really heavily on that front. On the other side, we are looking at how to make people use crypto. So more ways to spend crypto. And we're also pushing our open platform initiative where we let other partners to allow them to be the front end so that people can interact with them directly without interacting with Binance to trade. So they will be using our APIs to trade. So we're going from a B2B to C kind of a model where we have different cloud partners, etc., so that people can trade without knowing. For example, when you swipe your credit card, you're paying in crypto, but the shop is accepting fiat, so you're doing a trade, but you don't have to think about it. So we're pushing along those kind of areas. So we have different initiatives. We have a lot of different initiatives in those different areas, and they'll come out over time.
So right now, my second last question, CZ, is what's your personal goal for Binance? What's your next one that you're really focused on?
Well, actually, so my personal goal for Binance is actually. So my personal goal for Binance is really just sort of, I wish Binance to grow to a point where it does not rely on me at all. So I want to make myself more redundant. So this way, but I think by doing that, we'll build a stronger organization where the entire organization is much stronger, much more resilient. So that's kind of a more personal goal. But from a Binance perspective, so again, related to Binance, I want Binance to grow into a point where it's a relatively decentralized, fully autonomous organization where it doesn't depend on any one single person. Anyone can come and leave. Anyone can contribute. Anyone can participate. and there will be an economic model that makes it make sense for people who do contribute value, and so more of a decentralized organization. So that's like I think that's an initiative that will take, well, that's kind of a process that will take a few years to achieve. It's not going to be achieved overnight. So that's kind of one thing I'm working on kind of in the background. Yeah.
Awesome. CZ, we always end up, we've got one last question and everyone answers on the show. And I'll give you some time to think about it, but we ask, what do you think the price of Bitcoin in US dollars will be on New Year's Eve 2020? It's a critical question, and it's one we have roundups at the end of the year, so we'd love to hear your answer. We've had all sorts of different answers, and it's just such a fascinating time right now. And in terms of price.
So
this
we
is
have
not
a policy
advice as well. Let me just preclude that. There is no financial advice going on this show. No financial advice.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So again, we have a policy of not making price predictions, and any price prediction I make will be guaranteed wrong. So don't take this any seriously. But I think Bitcoin I'm very confident about the Bitcoin price at the end of this year. There's a large number of reasons for that. Let me just sort of spiel the reasons first. So we have so right now is a very interesting time. We have the financial crisis that's happening. We have hopefully by the end of the year things will have smoothed out. We're still like 9, 10 months away to the end of the year. I think a lot of stimulus is going to come into the economy. There's going to be a lot more money flowing around. So the Bitcoin is limited supply. So that's one key thing. The coronavirus, even though it's hot, is creating a lot of, is pausing the economy in a lot of places. But the coronavirus, the quarantines will take time, will take a month or so, and then things will become better. I think us as a population always rebound much stronger after we got hit. So I think that will go away. And I think more and more people will understand the cryptocurrency in this environment. So, and also given the sort of tension between some of the countries in the world right now, there's a lot of just bickering and fighting among different like really powerful countries. The cross-border trade war is going to intensify, which actually makes fiat transactions much harder. And people potentially will use cryptocurrency to facilitate a lot of those cross-border transactions. So given all of those things, and also there's a Bitcoin halving, which is happening soon. And so given all of those things, I think Bitcoin will be easily 100K or more. But again, that's not I have a 99% chance of being wrong. And even if I'm right, the timing will be off. So I think it'll be I think most of the predictions people make are way conservative right now. But again, I'm always overly bullish. That's my personality. So yeah.
Awesome stuff. CZ, thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Exchange. And to catch up with you, I believe your Twitter is CZ_Binance. And do follow you there. And I believe you put some cool tweets out. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, that is CZ talking about the economic turmoil that's going on and what's the actual relevance to Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, and all the things that finance is looking at. Do subscribe, guys, and do join us again. We'll see you guys later. Yeah.